for the sake of doing the job rightly. We have Mr. Harun Sharif with us today. Mr. Harun Sharif served as a Minister of State and Chairman BOI in the year 2018 and 19. The country's ranking on the Ease of Doing Business Index actually improved by 28 places under his leadership. He has also been Pakistan lead representative for industrial cooperation under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. We have Mr. Ehsan Malik on his right. Mr. Ehsan Malik has since January 2016 been the Chief Executive Officer of Pakistan Business Council, and by virtue of that position, a Director of the Pakistan Business Council as well. Prior to his position as a Chief Executive Officer, he has also remained CEO of Unilever Pakistan and spent a total of 24 years with Unilever in UK, Egypt and Sri Lanka. On my left, we have Mr. Jahangir Paracha, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Angro Polymer and Chemical Limited. In his most recent role, Mr. Paracha was serving as Chief Executive Officer of Angro Vopak Terminal Limited and Angro LNG Terminal Limited since March 2017. Earlier, he served as the Chief Executive Officer for Angro Powergen Kadirpur Limited. Just to start the session, before starting the session and just to get the stage on, I would briefly discuss a few comments or thoughts which I think is common for all of us, and we believe that the crisis that we face after every few years in Pakistan is probably the reason that we have not been able to control or manage our current account deficit. And one known reason for that is probably that we spend more than we produce in our country, which means that our GDP growth is not much to feed the deficit that we have. And due to this reason, our economy is heavily reliant on external debts. And now when we talk about external debts, that again is a huge challenge for the economy as a whole. Most recently, in the last few weeks, we have seen the problem that we have been facing with IMF for just 1.1 billion debt tranche, which is not released yet. There are certain issues with the capital, and the negotiations are still on. And when we talk about these IMF loans, the point is how long and till what time we are going to rely on such external debts. That is a big question that probably we'll get a good answer from our panelists today. Because reportedly, in the next 3 years, we have to pay back $73 billion, which is not an easy task, and it cannot be done without renegotiating or debt restructuring with the lenders and the donors. And in the current situation of the economy, when you will start negotiations with the lenders, obviously it will be one-sided, and the cost for such a negotiation could be very huge. So what we do today is that we start our discussion initially by asking our distinguished panelists to share their thoughts about the key economic issues that we face currently, and some of the way outs or the way forward that they believe are very important for us. Before opening the floor for question and answer session, I would again ask all the panelists to at least give us 3 concrete way out or suggestions which the government of Pakistan should take right now so that we can overcome the problems that we faced currently. So I will start with Mr. Harun Sharif on my right to please share his thoughts about the current economic situation. Thank you very much.
Ji, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So it's very kind of you to invite me here. It's a pleasure among the industry leaders and private sector leads who are present today. I think, Joe, the way introduction has been set and people have talked again and again and again, 2-3 things are we got to as Pakistanis, we got to keep in mind. कि पिछले 30 years say or 35 years, the structure of economy has not changed. When you speak about current account, it is basically an outcome of something. So the first fault line, I would call it a fault line. The fault line is that world around us has changed. our structure of economy has not changed. Other than services, we are stuck, at the same level of agriculture and the same level of industrial development. So that's number one. Number two fault line, which is mentioned, which is the macroeconomic fault line. In my opinion, as an economic policy person, Pakistan is going through one of the worst, foreign exchange liquidity crisis. But I would like to qualify. You understand this language better. Country is still not insolvent. So you have the endowments, it is the bad governance and the structure of economy which cannot leverage that. So if I look at the growth paradigm for 30-35 years, Pakistan's growth is slightly declining. ये जो हम रोज टीवी पे सुनते हैं कि जी जीडीपी इधर चला गया, the way you read it is कि over the period how you are performing vis-a-vis your competitors. So we are slightly below 4% growth, and that growth cannot go up, which is the third fault line. We have a crisis of investment. Our investment to GDP ratio is only 15% and below, whereas our competitors are at 25 to 30%. Now, if we need to provide dignified opportunity to 2.5 million people who are coming in the labor market every year, to people like yourselves, we need at least 7% growth. So what we need to keep in mind is whatever we do, in this structure, we don't need a rocket science. This is not going to happen. We cannot continue supporting people on this import subsidization, subsidies, which we have done for years and years and years. And now the time has come that we need to move towards a competitive economy. And we need to pick winners like, your sector. It is not possible that state can continue, patronizing and giving incentives to people who will never grow up. So that is and then there are two major fault lines, is our energy sector and our state-owned enterprises. So that's the fault line. You want me to stop here or the way forward, three things?
Please continue with the way forward, yeah.
Okay. So now this is the biggest deficit. Somebody like me who has worked internationally is still advising governments in the region. What worries me as a professional is, I think our biggest deficit is the trust deficit. हम पे इस वक्त एतबार कोई नहीं करता है. Neither are so-called friendly countries, nor institutions like IMF and others. Our competence ka crisis is so big that people really don't believe that we could do it. So we need to, in order to overcome, so my first suggestion is that any government and private sector in partnership, we need to come up with an economic value proposition instead of bargaining or our geopolitical positioning, which we have done over the past several years to regain the trust. Bangladesh has regained the trust. Cambodia has regained the trust. Vietnam has gone beyond regaining the trust. So why can't? So my first thing is that as a policy priority, we need to start honoring our commitments. We need to come up with one or two transactions and lower down expectations. जो मेरे दोस्त politician हैं, जब मैं cabinet में भी था, they love to cut down the ribbons. They want to talk about billions. The capability crisis in bureaucracy is so big. Second way forward is that we need to pick winners. That which are the sector which have comparative advantage. Allah Miyan ने हर country को एक comparative advantage दिया. In my opinion, when I look at the macro numbers of revival of growth, while the globally we are going in recession, now two countries, when IMF on 31st of January issued this report, and the global growth is going to come from China and India. More than 50%. The European growth projections are lower for the next 3 years. The North Americans are lower in the next year. East Asia is stable, but China's growth is 5.2%. India's growth is 6.8%. So second way forward question is that if we are sitting in a region while we neighbor with 50% of global growth, what are we doing about it? You know, how can we leverage the region? I keep on telling the foreign ministers and others that we send our best ambassadors still to New York, London and Geneva, whereas there is no business there. So we need to gear up a strategy for that. So picking winners and taking advantage of where the growth centers and liquidity are. Third and final suggestion is that we are obsessed with the idea of foreign direct investment. भाई जब लोकल इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर रहा है तो फॉरेन डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट कहाँ से आएगी सो वी नीड टू प्रायोरिटाइज इन्वेस्टर विदाउट द नेम और द कलर और द सूट और द टाई और वो इन्वेस्टर तभी होगा आई विल क्लोज ऑन दैट इन्वेस्टर जो मेरा तजर्बा 1.5 साल का हुकूमत में रहा या अभी भी मैं कर रहा हूँ एडवाइजिंग 4 countries on investment unless and until we cut down the size of the government investor is not going to basically have a trust here. We need to cut down state, its layers, above layers, above layers, and we need to basically insulate our priority sectors from our ministries. I know this thing, my bureaucracy doesn't like it. Lots of patronage-based private sector doesn't like it. But frankly, that's how Cambodia did it. I advised Hasina Wajid several years back. That's how MBS is doing it. That's where the world is going. If we continue going in the clutches of Islamabad, honestly, close down Islamabad, you will have growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you have very rightly pointed out a very important point about economic restructuring. My question for you for the second round is, when we come back after the first round, do you think that economic restructuring could be possible only when we have some institutional restructuring also in Pakistan?
Yeah, I'll come to
and until and unless it is done, it is difficult to get the economic restructuring.
I'll give you examples
for the second
next.
round. Yeah. So thank you very much. We have our fourth panelist, Dr. Salman Shah. He has arrived. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Salman Shah, former advisor on finance.
Sir, sorry, sir, here.
Thank you.
To continue the discussion, I would now request Jahangir Paracha Saab from Angro to please share his thoughts about the key issues.
So I think Harun Saab, covered literally everything, and I think it'll be a tough act to follow. But I think let's look very tactical, and then there is strategic, sort of changes. So obviously, currently, as Harun Saab said, trust is most important. Trust is internal as well as external. So people have lost trust, externals have lost trust, and internal investors have also lost trust, Currently with this balance of payment crisis which we are facing, especially sitting here with the chemical industry, a lot of our raw material is still imported, and people are in a crisis mode where they're going to be shutting down their factories, they're going to be laying off people, which is one of the toughest things to do. So this trust or signing up with IMF or bringing the multilaterals is so important that this will also give trust to your internal, stakeholders, that you have somebody in Islamabad who thinks about us. It's not just, pure politics, which we hear a lot of that. That is the first one, which I feel is very important, that you immediately restart at least the activity which is essential commodities will just be gone. You'll just see, and it's, even if you sign up with IMF, I feel we have also lost confidence with our suppliers also. So things have arrived, the LCs were not cleared. So I have to now fly and meet some of my suppliers to give them confidence that, this Pakistan is a going concern. There is a problem, but inshallah we will be back in business, So that is a very serious problem which we feel. And this is going to have long-term repercussions also. The pricing power which we had, negotiation is going to be gone. So when we go and talk to people, they are going to price in that risk now when they sell something to us as a raw material. LC confirmation charges are phenomenally high. So all those things are going to have long-term repercussions also for the country. And it's not going to be short-term. Even this small misstep which has happened has really shaken the confidence of everybody who deals with us also. It's not just the country. It's the industry, it's the businesses which have lost all the confidence with their suppliers or their partners abroad. That's one very important element which will happen. A lot of people who had invested in Pakistan, their dividends are not being remitted out also. So they are, as they said, you want to bring in more foreign investment, people who are already here, their dividends are now stuck for a number of, almost since April, I suppose. A phenomenal amount of money, and they're losing because our rupee has depreciated. They are losing every day because they were never able to take out that money. That's the second part. So when you go out and when you bring in a technologically complex industry, you need partners. Now, why would a partner come to Pakistan when existing partners are not very happy, with what is happening to them? And especially this dividend stoppage, I think is a very, very serious rethink for everybody because we used to always say that in 30 years, all the crises of Pakistan, this has never happened actually. This is the first time we have done this. So this has really shaken a lot of people. I had in my company, a Japanese investors, they flew in and they wanted to meet the state bank governor. And they have been in Pakistan prior to 1947 even. So and they said this is the first time in Pakistan's history this is happening to us. So this has obviously shaken the confidence. Third bit, I think, which is extremely important when you're going through such a crisis, I think we need to also reduce the barriers to trade from the region. Because if I'm paying $100 for something and I can buy that thing, I don't have the dollars, first of all. And if I can buy that same thing for $60 from my neighbor and I'm not being I'm being told you still have to go and buy that $100 and I don't have those $100. So this is an ideal time to reduce the barriers. As I always said, you are sitting right next to two big giants. Now, unfortunately with COVID, China lockdowns, the entire supply chain in China got disrupted. Our eastern neighbor is also a very large supplier of lots of basic commodities and lots of basic materials which are used in Pakistan and at a much cheaper rate. So less outflow of foreign exchange will also happen if you reduce this barrier. And I think, as Harun Sahab was saying, I think there has to be an understanding that we are net losers also. We are not net gainers. There is geopolitics, but you're losing also in this game. You're not gaining. And I think on a sort of, this is technical, and I think I'll talk a little bit later about the strategic. I think we'll have to be a little bit choosy on the FDI we want in the country also. Because a lot of FDI is coming, looking at Pakistani market, and I think the net outflow is always, so it's great to have products which are aspirational. We go abroad and we want to have a burger from a certain brand, but really, do we have the affordability as a country to remit franchise money even outside? I was just looking at this Tim Horton, which has just opened here in Lahore. I mean, that franchising money is going to go out. I'm sure they make some great coffees, but I mean, there are. I mean, that type of FDI is also has to be a little bit choosy. Yeah. That what is the country gaining is just sort of. So that's one other area where I'll allude in my second round.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the important point you have raised is the trust cost, which means that the industry is competing with other competitors not only based upon their cost of production, but there is a hidden cost which is called trust cost. When you negotiate with your customer, they always keep the trust cost. Supplier. They always keep that trust cost built in their negotiation. My next question would be for the second round is, what kind of measures do you think we should take to promote exports? Because exports would be an excellent source of feeding the current account deficit. So the next question in the second round would be how to promote export, what kind of measures the government should take. Welcome, sir. I will now request you to please share your thoughts about the key economic problems that we are currently facing and what do you believe are the major way out or the solutions to those problems. Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed Harun Sharif and Hassan Saab's contributions here, and so I don't know what they said. But let me try to summarize our current situation. Our current situation is that we have a very inward-looking economy, basically dealing with satisfying domestic demand. And this economy is very import dependent, which is a contradiction in itself. So you can't have an inward looking economy dependent on imports. And so far, we have been borrowing money to meet up this gap. So now the loans are so great that there's no way we can actually pay it through the cash flows of the economy. So you have to go to an IMF as the first step. And in spite of the fact that we are trying to play brinksmanship with the IMF, ultimately we'll have to sign on the dotted line. And we have to agree to their conditionalities, which are in fact based on our realities. So when we say that please don't impose new taxes, please don't increase the tariffs on electricity or make gas easier for us, we are basically saying that give us more debt so that we don't have to do this. And the IMF is saying that now you have reached the upper limit of your debt. You can't get any more debt. So now you have to go through a very painful adjustment. Now, what is that painful adjustment? The painful adjustment is that now the incentives of manufacturing in this country have changed altogether. Number one, the incentives is that if you produce in this country, you must export. Number two is that if you produce in this country, you must do import substitution in a way that whatever imports you have to do to make a product, you are able to either substitute those imports or then export something to pay for those imports. So this adjustment is going to be very painful for our manufacturers. And chemicals may be one. The auto industry, we see they are in that same situation. So, number of things. Number one, you have to become export oriented. Number two, that means you have to look at the world as a market rather than Pakistan as a market. Pakistan can be a good stepping stone, but it is not the ultimate market. Now, when we have to look at the world as our market, then we can't have one or two products and be an export-oriented country. We need to diversify our economy and diversify our exports. So as soon as you start talking about diversification, then you really come to the micro level at which you start looking at what are the supply chains in Pakistan which can be oriented towards the export market. So you have to go to places like Faisalabad, like Karachi, like Gujranwala, like Sialkot, like other manufacturing places which are really supplying the domestic market, and you have to see, can these places, can they switch? Can they become exporters? So can Faisalabad, which is already an exporter, for them it would be, can it export instead of textile, it can export 10 other products as well? And what are the basic investments in infrastructure which would be needed at the city level, at the district level, which our current development program doesn't cater to? So basically, when you talk about diversification, you start talking about location. So you have to upgrade all your locations where this production takes place, and upgrading means you upgrade the infrastructure, you upgrade the knowledge base, you upgrade the ability of the industry to become more competitive. So all kinds of industry specific infrastructure in terms of waste management or in terms of logistics, in terms of connectivity. These are the things which you have to do. And these things will take you at least a dozen years to complete. So there will be, if the economy has to be the driving force of development, then these cities and these rural areas where the production takes place, they have to be oriented towards productivity and competitiveness, which basically means a lot of hard work and lot of investment and lots of public-private partnerships and lot of deregulation and making things easier and opening the way for investments and all that. So far, what you have seen is at the very macro level where the IMF is saying, okay, fix your fiscal deficit. I want all your expenditures to be financed with your taxes. The IMF is saying, I want that the market for your foreign currency should clear, and whatever that price happens, that has to be attained. So these are very macro issues. The implications of these macro issues is the micro, what happens at the ground level.
Okay.
And at the ground level, you are not ready for what they have done. So at the ground level, you have to change, and you have to change in a very dramatic fashion, which would mean a lot more opportunities in a way. I mean, if you look at it, Pakistan is the 5th largest country in the world with the 5th largest working age population, but it's disconnected with the global markets. So you have to connect the population with global markets, and the population is in these cities like Faisalabad or Sialkot or Sargodha or Peshawar, or, so you can imagine that you need a total transformation of the production system. You need a total transformation of the regulatory system. You need to change your energy from being an import-dependent energy sector where even your power, these lights, we are paying in dollars for these lights. And we don't have the dollars. Pretty soon these lights will be switched off because you don't have the dollars to pay for them. So you have to change that. You have to change this into domestic energy, which means you have to have renewables a lot more. You have to have hydro a lot more. You have to have charcoal to a great extent, which means a lot of investment. So you have to create that investment environment where money can actually go into this transformation.
Absolutely.
So if we are looking for getting out of this problem which we face every time we are in a 23rd IMF program, and the thing is that every time we do the macro thing and we don't do the micro thing. So now we have to make, after doing the macro thing, you have to really transform the micro economy.
Okay, my question here, sir, for you is that you have very rightly pointed out we need to address micro level issues now. So do you think that we need a proper policy framework? I mean to say maybe industrial policy framework in Pakistan. I think we need that. And there is a dire need of having an industrial policy. We don't have it up till now. So if we have a industrial policy framework in place that can identify maybe 15, 16, 17 industrial sector where you have the potential, where you have the domestic supply chain available, and can provide certain incentives to them so that they can grow and they can feed the current account deficit.
Well, I think there is a lot of controversy on picking winners. And my approach would be that instead of picking winners, we should be facilitating the places, the locations where we already have some kind of a cluster developing, albeit it is not very sophisticated yet. But if we allow that to become big and allow that to become more sophisticated, allow that to bring in the investment, and the government plays a kind of a supportive role, I think that is what
Larger impact in the economy.
we should really be going for that.
Okay.
So instead of choosing that the government says, okay, from today we are going to support the IT sector, I would say definitely we need to support the IT sector as much as we need to support the textile sector, or as much as we need to support surgicals, or whatever is on the ground. Remember, the bureaucrat is not going to get you the export markets. It's the entrepreneur who is going to go there.
True.
So you have to empower the entrepreneur, which basically means you have to do privatization, get the government out of business. You have to deregulate, let the private sector do whatever they need to do without having to go to 20 different government agencies. You have to really cut the, and number three, you have to actually liberalize. You can't have protection. Protection has to go. Now, I think that we have the Business Council always saying that you need some semblance of protection. No, as long as you have protection, you will never reach the global markets.
Thank you, sir.
So you have to have,
Thank you.
you have to stand on your feet, and you can demand the government kindly give us the infrastructure which will make us productive,
Thank
which
you.
includes finance, which includes hard and soft infrastructure, which includes the digital economy and all that. So I think you have to put the private sector in front, but you can't kind of give it crutches. They have to stand on their feet,
Yeah.
and then you facilitate them
Thank you.
as much as possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Moving on to our fourth panelist, Ehsan Malik Saab. Could you please share your thoughts?
Okay, I mean, a lot of what has already been said by Shah Saab is music to my ears. I wish the government of Pakistan could make a competitive, level playing field for local manufacturing. The fact is that does not exist. Today, if you are in Karachi, and I would dare say in a number of other parts of Pakistan, perhaps Lahore is an exception, you have to buy your water. You have to buy expensive land, particularly if you are in Karachi. There is no industrial estate near Karachi. That's the largest city, largest commercial center that we have in this country. Electricity, apart from the 5 sectors that are given electricity, and I say they are not given electricity at a subsidized rate, they are given electricity at the rate that they are able to compete with countries like Bangladesh. So that's regionally competitive electricity tariff. That tariff is not given to industries that cater even to the local market, let alone other export sectors. So we do not have a level playing field. As a result of that, over the years, if you take the last 20, 30 years, Pakistan has been deindustrializing every year. If you look at the percentage of GDP that manufacturing represents, it has steadily been coming down. But let me come back to that. Let me just go back onto the economy. I think all of us know that IMF is now, we will have to sign up on the IMF program. IMF will give us 1.1 billion. Some of the other friendly countries will donate, or however they give, another 3 or 4 billion. That is not going to be enough. I'm sorry to say, Harun, I do not agree with you. Pakistan is insolvent as we speak. If our foreign lenders do not trust us and are not prepared to give us additional money, we are insolvent. If our suppliers, for example, are not willing to give us supplies on credit, we are insolvent. We should understand that and we should start coping with that. We should get professional advice. And I agree with Harun, in Islamabad, the Ministry of Finance does not have the competence to go and negotiate a reprofiling of a debt. Each year for the next 3 or 4 years, we need to pay $25 billion a year. Never mind the current account deficit. That has to be funded additionally. Let's call a brick. For too long, we have lived in a fantasy land. We have, somebody has come and given us handouts, and we become very dependent on those handouts. I think it is time to realize that those handouts are not coming. Our geo-economic position is not what it was before the pullout from Afghanistan. The hard reality is that that is not going to happen again. And I think there is good news in that. In this very exhibition, in a number of stalls that I went, everybody kept saying, we import so much in order to manufacture our chemicals, but we are actively looking at indigenization. I think indigenization is the way forward. And there, we have no, even if the indigenization is at an expensive cost or at a higher cost than the imported raw materials, it is still better because it does not involve outflow of foreign exchange. So I think that's a practical reality that we must cope with. Pakistan's problem is not the level of imports. Look at Vietnam. If you look at imports as a percentage of GDP, Vietnam's is 103% of their GDP. But they export a lot more. So their exports as a percentage of GDP is 106% of GDP. So they make 3%. The difference between the import and the export is their trade surplus, right? So they are very import dependent. They are not, they are importing a lot of parts, etc., from China, from Korea, from Taiwan, even from Japan, assembling it. Samsung alone contributes 28% of the total export earnings. So our problem is exports. It is not really imports. And for exports, today, if you want to expand your capacity, and let's say you can't do it on the land that you have, where is the special economic zone? Which special economic zone is working? Where can you get utilities at a competitive cost, right? You can't, unfortunately. So, and look at the fiscal environment. The assurance that was given when the special economic zones were proposed was that there would be a tax exemption. I personally actually don't believe in tax exemption, but that was an assurance that was given on the basis of which people came and invested or at least decided to invest whenever the special economic zones get going. But then there's now a minimum tax. So doesn't matter whether you make a profit or not, you have to pay a minimum tax. Something that has not been touched upon so far is the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is a real issue. You will not have manufacturers come in the formal sector and establish manufacturing if real estate gives you a better return, and that is all in the informal sector, right? If you do not, for example, promote the export of services, if you make a shirt and you export shirt, you get a rebate. If you export IT services, you get no rebate at all. Yeah. What is the net result? Half of our IT exports do not come back. The remittances do not come back to this country because there is no incentive, and it's quite easy to park that abroad, or it was easy to park that abroad. So I would say that today hard reality is hitting Pakistan, and that is, in my opinion, a good position to be in. It is time that we indigenize and become significantly more self-sufficient than we've ever been. It is also time that we downscale the reliance on the government. The government is not going to give us anything at all. It is best, as Harun said, that they get out of business and they allow business to take place. I also partly agree with what Shah Saab saying about industrial policy. Industrial policy should be facilitative broadly. It should not be picking winners and losers. Well, it will never pick losers, but it should not be picking winners. FDI, I wholeheartedly agree, and this is something that we've been saying, PBC has been saying for the last 5, 6 or more years, that let's welcome the right FDI. I, by the way, work for a consumer product company, and that consumer product company's annual return on investment is 160%. Yeah, but they don't export anything at all, right? And that is true, unfortunately, for virtually every FDI that has come into this country. We go about chasing, and Harun will agree with me, the BOI would lay out a red carpet for the CEO of a multinational company, coming in. But if one of you, one of you local companies was to walk in, you'll be lucky to get an appointment. Yeah, maybe I'm exaggerating to make the point. But this is a sad fact. We have welcomed a lot of FDI, which has not contributed. They have certainly contributed to technology. They've contributed to managerial talent. All brownie, points to them for that. But if you are looking at the external account, they have actually drained the external account. If a soap business grows, what does the soap business rely upon? It relies upon imported vegetable oil from which they make that, right? Unfortunately, they do not support import substitution because that's not their business, right? It's not their business to grow oil seeds in the country. It's somebody else's business. So they focus on what's their business. They take the imported oil, they manufacture the soap, they sell it in the local country. Why don't they export that? That's the most important question. The reason why they don't export it, because it takes energy, electricity to produce this soap. Electricity today is 70% more expensive than the regional supply points. So why doesn't a multinational company rely on Pakistan to source this? Because they've got cheaper sources. They can go to India, they can go to other countries that supply electricity or provide electricity at a much lower cost. So these are the kind of things that we should really be focusing on. So just to conclude, I totally agree. It has to be a bottoms-up policy making when we go forward. Some of the points that were made about cities, I would actually take it beyond cities. Cities are very important, of course, not to belittle that. We have a member, happens to be in the poultry industry. They are the dominant, operators in the poultry industry. They had a great idea. They said, why don't we go to North America? There's a lot of Muslims living there, including Pakistanis, and they would like to have halal chicken. So they went there and they had a beauty contest where 20 of the 50 states entered that beauty contest to attract their investment. The New York state won that. Then they had a second beauty contest of all the boroughs in the New York state that bid for their business, and one of the boroughs got it, right? And the boroughs were empowered to give land at a concessional rental cost. They didn't sell it, but that is the way that it should be done in special economic zones also. Never sell the land, because then you get property speculators coming in. You allow the industrial users to come in on rent. They provided subsidy for labor for a limited time. Yeah. So I think that is what should be the concept in Pakistan, that not only the cities, but the cities certainly, but even below the cities. Why doesn't somebody go and establish a manufacturing unit in the rural areas, where they have to pay the same minimum wage if they are in the formal sector, and they pay the minimum wage because a lot of them are not in the informal sector. They're not in the formal sector. But so why should they go to the rural areas and set it up if they have to pay the same cost? There's no rural local authority that is willing to subsidize. There's no province willing to subsidize that either. Yeah. But so there is a role for subsidies. It has to be for a limited time. There have to be sunset clauses, and there have to be other objectives. Yeah. And yes, the aim should be to make industry competitive. And this is why we propose, and we have been advocating, import substitution based on a limited time, rationalized, with a sunset clause protection. So yes, protection, but not protection blank.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir, for your thoughts. Thank you very much. I'll come back to my earlier question with Harun Saab, that to have an economic restructuring, do we need institutional restructuring in Pakistan?
Thank you very much. First of all, all the fellow panelists have identified the fault lines again and again, distortions again and again. And one of the common theme is that the question of competence that how to take it forward. We have discussed the priorities that without thinking, we have allowed investors to come in areas which are actually detrimental to our fault lines. They have further aggravated the fault lines rather than helping us in job creation, exports, technology transfer, productivity, production. So we have identified. We go on these TV talk shows, we talk to government, we talk to IMF, we talk to international people. Fundamental question is who will do it, which you are actually asking.
Yeah.
So let me ask all of us, do you really think, let's get out of denial. हम सबका interaction रहा है. Do you think politicians can do it? I will just leave the question for them. Do we really believe that our current state of bureaucracy can do it? This whole, if we need to change the structure of economy towards the line which all of us are talking, and it's not all of us, several people are talking. So what we need to look at it, that is it even doable at this stage? But my answer is, which I said earlier, if Cambodia can do it, if Vietnam, which was a security state, turned into an economic powerhouse, Indonesia, which was controlled by military, this basically, Bangladesh has become, an export hub. So where are we stuck? And that's the institutional question.
Absolutely.
Where my worry is, which we identified, there is far too much state everywhere in the shape of regulations, in shape of policies, and are continuously expanding. Let's be, mere colleagues, look at the sizes of our cabinets. Look at the size of continuously expanding in the recession. Second part is, institutionally, how can you do it? Now, first, people tried, my good friend Ishrat Hussain, for years, trying to fix the bureaucracy. Now, bureaucracy is globally, I have seen how UK did it, how Malaysia did it. It can be fixed, but it takes 30 years' time because the rot is very deep. ये कोई overnight switch से incentive structure नहीं बदला है. हम तो अभी look at our, capability. हम तो एक GOR को नहीं change कर पाए. So how can we change the structure? Second part is that, is there any incentive for a bureaucrat to do it? Even if they are competent, they have zero incentive to perform. अगर वो नहीं करेगा perform तो promote हो जाएगा. If he or she performs, he might become an OSD. So how people do it? What worries me is that lots of people are giving solutions of something like a technocratic solution to do it. Political parties don't have structures the way countries have done it, in my humble opinion. I would again say that in order to revive our confidence, we just need to give a direction. People know, as Salman Shah Sahab is saying, that it's going to take a decade or more to have results. But hum simmat to de na, that we are serious about doing it.
Absolutely.
Now, let's pick up one or two priority areas which has come up in this discussion. Everybody is saying that energy sector is a fault line. Okay? Cost of doing business, basically wrong incentives, IPPs. Everybody is saying that ultimate solution is that your export earning should match the import earning, not that stopping imports by administrative measures. All of us are talking about it. Everybody thinks and knows that opportunity is in emerging Asia. Opportunity is not where our traditional markets are.
Absolutely.
So अगर हमारी 3 या 4, not picking winners, but at least हमारे जो economic policy thematic areas, which are the institutions responsible to deliver? The politician, unfortunately, is micromanaging everything. I tweeted yesterday that what is the business of Prime Minister to appoint National Bank's president? So we are micromanaging everything. Now, if we decide energy, it is the same country which dealt with COVID through NCOC. That's an institutional structure where all stakeholders sit together and they find solution outcome based. Issue ye hai कि what we do is that we don't make a competent person in charge for foreseeable future of that institution. If we give a competent person in charge कि आपने energy sector ठीक करना है 5 साल में, come what may, which government comes, will take outcome from you. That is how Bangladesh done it. Others done it. If we decide that we need to get rid of state-owned enterprises, then make the privatization commission independent with the CEO. Do you really think I need an auction house? In 5 years' time, they have sold services, international hotel only. So आप उसको institutional space में let the private sector and expertise come in.
Okay.
Bureaucrat cannot do it. In my closure, in our priorities, the policy maker and the politician should just give a direction that yes, this is a priority. Institutional independence and competence should be ensured and governed and maybe rather autocratically, jealously protected. Markets will get a positive signal.
Thank you.
And then, countries start, reviving. In the
Excellent.
current state of bureaucracy and politics, I'm afraid it's in a flux. The incompetence is the major deficit. We will continue to linger on.
Thank you. Excellent point. Excellent point. Sir, to you again. How to promote the exports and what kind of measures are required at least to promote exports from the Pakistan?
So I think a lot of that was alluded just now. It's not an easy solution, first of all. I think one thing which is very important, and I think Hassan Saab also talked about it, exports are only possible when you are globally competitive. Okay? So you have to be very sure, now through policy or by certain incentives, that if a duty protection is going to come, I want you to invest $300 million with that type of a scale that you can go and produce that thing at a world scale level and compete. And then with a sunset clause, definitely. It can't be for perpetuity and it's a painful process. A lot of industry will die also. So in reality, if you are going to be a large country of our size, needs jobs which come through manufacturing also. India, Indonesia, China, large populations, Bangladesh, manufacturing provides large jobs. So that's one area where I personally feel we need to now incentivize in a manner. One, I talked about FDI, be selective. Don't let everything come in, be selective. And second is probably duty protection has to be linked with the size of the investment which comes. So you can't just bring very, very small investments, focus totally on local markets, because whenever you start something large or world scale, I think a substantial part of your production will have to be exported. Local market would not be that big. This is how others have done it. So the local markets, when your GDP improves, if you start, give me an example of a fridge. If you're going to produce 1 million fridges, and Pakistan has a market of 500,000 fridges have to be exported at very low margins. So your threshold to actually earn profit will go down. But then that's the way. And in the local market, you can get some level of protection so it balances out. The scale will make the big difference.
So economies of scale is...
Economies of scale, period.
Yeah.
So I don't see a single merger in the entire industry, in the textile industry of Pakistan. I was in Turkey and I found out that in plastics, Pakistan, we have 700 people doing that. They have 40 economies of scale. When they had economies of scale, they were importing certain things and exporting for $500 million. That is the economies of scale. That is actually missing in our scheme of things. Incentives are available to everybody, whatever size of investment they do. And that's probably not letting people grow on size. Second bit, I think, which is very, very important is, and this is another realization I learned about 15 years back, that productivity is extremely low. We were talking and negotiating with a international, EPC contractor, which was going to do a project in Pakistan. So if China was a 10, Pakistan was 3.
In productivity?
Yes. So if a project could be done in China in 3 years, imagine that same project will be done in 6 years with a higher cost. Obviously, when you're doing a project for that long. I think the key here is skill-based diploma education, period. Degrees important, degrees are important. I'm not saying that universities are not important, they are extremely important. But for how many kids are going to go into universities? You need to have maybe class 8th, 10th, 3 years of diploma. This manpower will be available locally, and also you can export, and they can come back with those skills back also. A lot of these guest workers which went from Turkey to Germany in 60s, they went and worked in the factories. They were not doing construction. They brought those skills back. Some of them came back, and then they were able to, provide that skill set to their own companies and industry. We have seen also in Engro specifically, a lot of expats who come back, they come back. A lot of people have parents, other drivers which bring them back to Pakistan. They immediately upskill our organizations when they come back with those skills.
Thank you.
So that's another part which I think is very, very low productivity. I feel even if you have an investment, our people will not produce good quality products, and we will have a lot of error rate. And that can only improve if we are really upskilling people, good electricians, you need good metal craft guys, you need good welders. Now, I remember that if you find China, welders are women. They don't have men welders. And we were doing a project and they said 0 defect.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much for your thoughts. So floor is now open for questions. Please introduce yourself, and instead of comments, please ask question and identify the panelists to whom you want to ask the question. We only have 10 more minutes maximum. So please avoid comments and only questions, please. Very brief. Yeah, okay. ठीक है.
ले ले पहले question.
जी. आपका क्वेश्चन किसके लिए है, प्लीज आइडेंटिफाई कर देगा तो सो दैट दे कैन प्रिपेयर देयर आंसर.
एनीबॉडी कैन आंसर.
जी प्लीज.
मेरा ताल्लुक ट्रेड कम्युनिटी से है और मैं केमिकल रॉ मटेरियल की इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड करता हूँ. मेरा नाम इरफान असगर है. मैं अपनी एसोसिएशन को भी रिप्रेजेंट करता हूँ. सर, इस वक्त जो करंट सूरत हाल है, आप लोगों ने कुछ सॉल्यूशंस दिए मीडियम टर्म एंड लॉन्ग टर्म. इस वक्त सूरत हाल ये है कि हमारे पास मरीज़ वेंटिलेटर पे है, हमारी इकॉनमी इज़ ऑन वेंटिलेटर. हमने उसकी जान बचानी है. हमें कोई ऐसा सॉल्यूशन दें जिससे जान बच सके, क्योंकि इस वक्त हमारी जान US डॉलर से बचनी है. हमारे हज़ारों कंटेनर्स पोर्ट पे पड़े हैं. अगर एक इंडस्ट्री 40 रॉ मटेरियल लेती है और उसको 2 नहीं मिलेंगे तो वो नहीं चल सके. और आज इंडस्ट्री क्लोजर पे जा रही है. कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री, मीडियम इंडस्ट्री और बड़ी इंडस्ट्रीज भी. मेरे पास LC ड्राफ्ट्स 2-2 महीने से पड़े हैं, ट्रांसमिट नहीं हो रहे. सर, ये जो हालत जा रही है, अगर हम मरीज ही नहीं बचेगा तो ये टर्म, लॉन्ग टर्म और मीडियम टर्म क्या काम करेंगे?
थैंक यू वेरी मच.
सर, सवाल ये है कि कोई ऐसा सॉल्यूशन दे कि हम इस करंट पोजीशन में अपने आप को सर्वाइव कर सकें.
थैंक यू. Got it. And anyone else who wants to ask question? Okay, here. इधर एक प्लीज माइक दे दें इधर. Sir, would you like to respond to the first question?
हेलो, मेरा नाम खालिद बशीर है. बाय प्रोफेशन मैं इंजीनियर हूँ. मैं 94 से चाइना में रह रहा हूँ. मेरी वहाँ फैक्ट्री है अपनी, और यहाँ पर मैं स्पेशली इसको अटेंड करने के लिए आया था. मैं ऑल केमिकल इंजीनियर्स एसोसिएशन का पैटर्न इन चीफ भी हूँ, प्रेसिडेंट भी. आपके स्पेशल सुनने के लिए मैं यहाँ आज आया था. हमारा सलूशन क्या है? मैं चाइना के रेफरेंस से बात करूँगा, क्योंकि मैं वहाँ कोई 28 साल से रह रहा हूँ. जो हमारा वहाँ केमिकल पार्क है, उसकी फैसिलिटीज़, चाइनीज़ गवर्नमेंट की फैसिलिटीज़, हमारे जो फैसिलिटीज वहाँ दी जाती हैं एज ए फॉरेनर्स, एज ए जॉइंट वेंचर्स, वो एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी स्पेशल हैं जो हम वहाँ इंजॉय करते हैं. जो मेरा केमिकल पार्क है नानजिंग में, वो आपके डिफेंस से भी ज़्यादा खूबसूरत है. वहाँ पर सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड के प्लांट से ذرا بڑھ بھی کسی قسم کی بدبو سلفر ڈائی آکسائڈ یہ نہیں آتی. اب میں آپ کے پوائنٹ پہ آتا ہوں. سوال انہوں نے کیسے ترقی کی؟ 94 میں وہ ہم سے زیادہ پور تھے اور ان کی ٹوٹی سڑکیں، ٹوٹے گھر، ہر چیز خراب تھی. جب وہاں پر گیا، میں بیجنگ یونیورسٹی میں پڑھانا شروع کیا تو ان کا ایک ہی سسٹم تھا. ایک لائن میں کہوں گا کہ ہم نے اکانومی کو امریکہ کی طرح کیسے لانا ہے، اور یہی ٹاپک انہوں نے مجھے پڑھانے کے لیے دیا. پھر انہوں نے ایک اکنامک ٹری بنایا جس میں ان کا پرائم منسٹر اور پریزیڈنٹ ہمیشہ کے لیے صرف اور صرف انجینئر ہوتا ہے، پالیٹیشین سے جان چھڑا لی. میرا سوال یہ ہے کہ ٹیکنوکریٹس کو ٹاپ پر اپنے لانا ہے. پالیٹیشین کا یہ کام نہیں ہے، ایڈمنسٹریشن پالیٹیشین کا کام نہیں ہے. تھینک یو ویری مچ.
تھینک یو سر، تھینک یو. کوئی اور سوال؟ ایک اور آخری سوال پلیز. ویری کوئکلی پلیز، جلدی سے. وہ آخری سوال انہوں نے
Thank you very much. I'm a visitor here and work for a multinational Japanese company. All my career living outside Pakistan now. So my question is to Mr. Salman. I heard all panelists are saying that we should sign the dotted line with the IMF. Is this thought crossing anyone's mind? Maybe this is the solution. Going to structure default now, before it actually gets messier and messier. Maybe we will be in default in 6 months' time or a 3-year time. I do not know, honestly. But I'm continuously thinking the only solution for Pakistan is default now. That's my question to Mr. Salman. What do you think about it?
Thank you very much. All questions for you.
جی آئی تھنک دیز آر ویری گڈ کوشچنس، اور اس کو سمجھنے کے لیے سب سے امپورٹنٹ چیز جو ہے وہ وائی از آئی ایم ایف سو امپورٹنٹ، اینڈ دین آئی ٹاک اباؤٹ دا چائنیز تھنگ اینڈ ہاؤ وی کین ڈو واٹ ایور امیجیٹلی. سو سب سے پہلے تو یہ ہے کہ ہمارا جو اس وقت انڈیکیٹر ہے دنیا کی فائنینشیل مارکیٹس میں، وہ یہ ہے کہ آپ وہاں سے کوئی پیسہ ریز نہیں کر سکتے. سو ان ادر ورڈس ٹو آنسر دا کوشچن کہ جی ہم نے 7 بلین مال اٹھانا ہے، پورٹس پہ ہے، اس کا پیسہ کہاں سے آئے گا؟ تو وہ انٹرنیشنل فائنینشیل مارکیٹس وہ پیسہ نہیں دیں گے، کیونکہ اس وقت آپ کا جو ییلڈ ہے آپ کے بانڈس پہ وہ 70-80% پہ پہنچی ہوئی ہے. اس ریٹ پہ آپ فائنینس کر ہی نہیں سکتے، ہو ہی نہیں سکتے، کوئی دے گا ہی نہیں. دوسری چیز ہے کہ اس کو نیچے لانا بہت ضروری ہے. یہ نہیں ہے کہ وہ 70-80 پہ ہی بیٹھا رہے. اس کے لیے آئی ایم ایف پروگرام بہت کریٹیکل ہے، along with a plan. کہ یہ آئی ایم ایف کے جو سارے پلانس بن رہے ہیں نا، یہ they have certain objectives to tell to the lenders کہ یار یہ ultimately آپ کو پیسہ واپس مل جائے گا. And in the context of big nations, it is not a very big amount. اب ہم نے بات کی ہے کہ 30 ارب ہر سال ہم نے دینا ہے اگلے کئی سالوں میں. تو اس کو جب آپ when you go into it and you unbundle that 30 ارب، تو اس میں کم از کم 10 ارب ہر سال چائنا کا. اور حیرت کی بات یہ ہے کہ ہم امریکہ اور یورپ اور ادھر ادھر کے تو چکر ایسے لگا رہے ہیں جیسے کہ ہم پتہ نہیں انہوں نے ہی ہمیں بیل آؤٹ کرنا ہے. ایکچولی انہوں نے ہمیں ان کے پاس انٹرسٹ ہی نہیں ہے ہمیں بیل آؤٹ کرنے. سو نمبر 1 ہے کہ چین سے تو بات کرو. چین سے آپ کو کم از کم 10 سال کی ڈیفرمنٹ چاہیے آپ کے چائنیز لونز کی اور چائنیز بینکس کے لونز. اب وہ ہو سکتا ہے انہوں نے سری لنکا کو کل ہی 2 سال کی دیے. وی نیڈ اے لاٹ مور بٹ وی نیڈ ٹو انگیج. بٹ ہم تو ان کو کہہ رہے ہیں کہ جی ہم تو امریکن ہیں، ہم نے تو امریکہ سے ہی لینے ہیں پیسے، ہم تو آپ سے نہیں لیں گے، آپ کا پیسہ جو ہے نا وہ ٹھیک نہیں ہے. تو وہ ہم نے ایٹیٹیوڈ چینج کرنا. دوسرا ہم نے ان سے یہ بات کرنی ہے کہ یہ جو لون ہم واپس کریں گے یہ ہم آپ کو ایکسپورٹ کر کے واپس کریں گے، ہم اپنے کسی ریزروز میں سے نہیں دیں. سو وہ بات ایک اپرچونٹی کے طور پہ آگے آ سکتی ہے. دوز پیپل ہو ہیو بزنس لنکس ود چائنا دے کین ڈو ویری ویل. اور اس وقت آپ میرا خیال ہے کہ بلاول کو امریکہ کے چکر لگانے کے بجائے چین کے چکر لگانے چاہیے. یا ہمارے جو اسٹیبلشمنٹ ہے دے شوڈ ٹاک ٹو چائنا بیکاز چائنا از دا فیوچر. دے ہیو دا منی, they have the markets, they have the technology, and they have the markets. تو I don't know کہ ہم اب ساری عمر تو ہمیں یہ کہتے رہے کہ وہ taller than Himalayas and deeper than the seas and all that. جب وقت آیا ہے تو اب ہم پھر واپس ادھر بھاگ گئے ہیں دم دبا کے. سو نمبر 1 چائنا کی اسٹریٹجی ہمارے لیے بہت ہی اہم ہے. ایکسپورٹ مارکیٹ بھی ہمیں چائنا کی دیکھنی چاہیے. نمبر 2 آئی ایم ایف پروگرام میں انہوں نے بڑی کلیئرلی بتایا ہے کہ آپ فورن کرنسی مارکیٹ بنائیں. یہ جو انٹر بینک مارکیٹ ہے اس کو وہ کہتے ہیں کہ اس مارکیٹ کو فنکشنل کریں. اس میں پیسہ ریزروز میں سے نہیں آئے گا, اس میں پیسہ آپ کے پرائیویٹ سیکٹر کا پیسہ آئے گا. سو اگر کسی کا مال پھنسا ہوا ہے اور وہ کسی سے ڈیل وہاں کر لیتا ہے فائنینسنگ اس کی 6 مہینے سال کی, تو وہ اس کے ذریعے یہ کلیئر ہو سکتا ہے. ادروائز یہ اگر آپ سمجھتے ہیں کہ ریزروز جو ہیں جو آلریڈی ختم ہونے کے قریب ہیں اس میں سے آپ کو پیسہ مل جائے گا. 3 ارب کے ریزرو ہیں, 8 ارب آپ نے دینا ہے, تو وہ ممکن نہیں ہے. سو دس مارکیٹ ول ٹیک ٹائم ٹو سیٹ. اب ریٹ جو ہے ڈالر ایکسچینج ریٹ اس مارکیٹ میں جو بنے گا ابھی تک لوگوں کو نہیں پتا کہ وہ الٹیمیٹلی کہاں جا کے ٹھہرے گا. اب آج کل میں دیکھ رہا ہوں کبھی 1 روپیہ اوپر جاتا ہے, پھر 4-5 روپے اوپر چلے جاتا ہے, 1 روپیہ نیچے آتا ہے. تو تھوڑی بہت اس کے قریب آپ پہنچ رہے ہیں. لیکن اگر یہ اس وقت 200 لیٹ سے 80 سے تھوڑا سا نیچے ہے, 280 اور 300 کے درمیان اس نے کہیں جا کے سیٹل ہو جانا ہے. اور پھر یہ فلوز جو ہیں یہ ایک فائنینشیل مارکیٹ ڈالرز کی یہاں پہ بنے گی, اس کے ذریعے آپ کو کام کرنا ہے. تیسرا پوائنٹ یہ ہے کہ بزنس ایز یوزول آپ کی نہیں چل سکتی. نہ وہ مارکیٹس آپ کی چل سکتی ہیں, نہ وہ پاکستان کی مارکیٹ چل سکتی ہے, نہ آپ کی اورینٹیشن آف جسٹ سپلائنگ ڈومیسٹک ڈیمانڈ یہ نہیں چل سکتی. پرٹیکولرلی یہ جو انڈسٹری ہے کیمیکلز, یہ تو بہت خطرے میں ہے. آئی مین یہ انلیس یو پیپل فائنڈ اے وے آف کریٹنگ ویلیو اینڈ ایکسپورٹنگ, یا آپ جو امپورٹس ہیں اس کو آپ ختم کر دیتے ہیں, انڈیجنائزیشن اگر کر لیتے ہیں تو آپ کا سروائیول ہو سکتا ہے. اگر آپ نے امپورٹس پہ ہی رہنا ہے اینڈ یو ایکسپیکٹ کہ گورنمنٹ آپ کو سستے ڈالرز بھی دے گی اور آپ کو وہ لونز بھی دے گی, سبسڈیز بھی دے گی, بجلی بھی سستی دے گی, تو وہ کہانی آئی تھنک ختم ہوگی. سو اگلے 3-4-5 سال آر گوئنگ ٹو بی ایکسٹریملی ایئرز آف ایڈجسٹمنٹ. آئی تھنک دے آر دی ایئرز آف ایڈجسٹمنٹ. غریبوں کو فکر ہونی چاہیے, ان کی تو کھانا پینا بھی مشکل ہو جائے گا. اس کے لیے آپ کو واقعی سبسڈی دینی پڑے گی. جو ان امپلائمنٹ ہوگا یا جو بالکل آئی مین رات کا کھانا نہیں کھا سکتے, ان کو آپ کو دینا پڑے گا. بٹ مڈل کلاسز, انڈسٹریل کلاس, رچ کلاس, یو ہیو ٹو چینج. آپ اگر چینج نہیں کریں گے تو یو ول پیرش. سو چینج اور پیرش از دی تھنگ. چینج جو ہے اٹ کین بی ڈیفیکلٹ ٹو بگن ود, بٹ اٹ کین بی ویری پروفٹیبل ٹو ان دی الٹیمیٹ اسکیم آف تھنگس. کیونکہ آپ دیکھیں, آپ نے بات کی کہ ویٹنام 150 بلین کی ایکسپورٹس کر رہے ہیں. ہماری تو صرف یہ ہے کہ ہم 50 کر لیں تو ہمارے مسئلے حل ہو جاتے ہیں. اور ویٹنام تو ابھی اتنی تباہی سے نکلا ہے, نیست و نبود ہو گیا تھا, لیکن واپسی کا راستہ ایک کنسرٹڈ ٹرانسفارمیشن پلان کے ذریعے آتا ہے. پورے نیشن کو آپ نے موبلائز کرنا ہے کہ وہ اس پہ عمل کریں. سب سے امپورٹنٹ بندہ پاکستان کی اکانومی کے مینجمنٹ کے پوائنٹ آف ویو سے از دا پرائم منسٹر. اور پرائم منسٹر کو اگر ہم سمجھتے ہیں کہ ہم بائی پاس کر دیں گے تو وہ نہیں ہو سکتا. دوسری چیز ہے کہ پرائم منسٹر آفس کو میں دیکھ رہا تھا, 50 بیوروکریٹ ہیں وہاں بیٹھے ہوئے, گریڈ 22 سے لے کے گریڈ 17 تک. ایک بھی اس میں اکانومسٹ نہیں ہے, ایک بھی اس میں پروفیشنل نہیں ہے, ایک بھی وہ سیکشن نہیں ہے جو اکانومی سے ڈیل کرے. اٹس آل اباؤٹ لا اینڈ آرڈر کا کون ہے, ایڈمنسٹریشن کون کرتا ہے, تنخواہیں کس نے دینی ہے, پینشنز کا کیا ہوگا, نتھنگ آن دی اکانومی. سو وی نیڈ این اکنامک ٹرانسفارمیشن پلان. اس میں آپ نے دیکھنا ہے کہ ڈفرینٹ ایریاز میں کون سی ریفارمز کرنی ہے, ٹھٹا ٹھک امیجیٹ ہوں. یہ نہیں ہے کہ 10 سال آپ ویٹ کرتے رہیں. آپ کو سائز آف گورنمنٹ کو امیجیٹلی سلیش کرنا ہے, کٹ ڈاؤن نہیں کرنا, سلیش کرنا ہے. ابھی آئی ایم ایف پروگرام میں آپ پی ایس ڈی پی کو 300 بلین سے کٹ کر رہے ہیں. میں تو کہتا ہوں 1000 بلین سے آپ کٹ کریں, آپ پروونسز کو کٹ کریں. انیبل دا پرائیویٹ سیکٹر. ہمارا اس وقت یہ ہے ٹیکس اینڈ اسپینڈ بائی دا گورنمنٹ. واٹ آئی ایم سیئنگ از forget about taxes, cut down the government, let the private sector handle this. They'll do a better job of it.
I just wanted to add, I think I totally agree the administration, the government costs should go down. But I think there is a significant potential to raise more taxes also. We've identified, for example, 2 trillion rupees worth of additional potential. جس میں things like real estate, wholesale,
وہ ٹرسٹ کی بات ہے نا,
retail,
ٹرسٹ نہیں
trust
ہے.
کی بات ہے. I think all that can be done. And one additional point, I think on exports, if you look at the world کی total trade آپ دیکھیں, پاکستان کی بات نہیں, but the global trade اگر دیکھیں تو 66% of that is in the engineering sector, the fuel, plastics, chemicals, and motor vehicles, right? Plastics, chemicals are very close to your sector. So I think there's a lot of potential for this particular sector.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. This concludes our session. Please join me to thank our panelists.
آپ ہمارے ساتھ رکیں گے سر؟ آپ بس 1 منٹ ہمارے سوونرز کے لیے. میں اب دعوت دینا چاہوں گا ہارون علی خان صاحب کو, جو ایم ڈی ہیں CHT پاکستان کے اور ہیڈ ہیں پاکستان کیمیکل ایکسپو کمیٹی کے, کہ وہ آئیں اور ہمارے اسٹیمڈ پینلسٹ کو سوونیر دیں.
Mr. Haroon Sharif, former Minister of State, Chairman, Board of Investment of Pakistan, please step forward to receive your souvenir. Mr. Salman Shah. Thank you so much. Mr. Ehsan A. Malik.
اب میں سوونیر پیش کرنے کے لیے دعوت دینا چاہوں گا چیئرمین پاکستان کیمیکل مینوفیکچرنگ ایسوسی ایشن جے کمار صاحب کو, کہ وہ آئیں اور جہانگیر پراچا صاحب اور سیف اللہ خان صاحب کو سوونیر پیش کریں.
Jahangir Pracha, please step forward to receive your souvenir. And Mr. Saifullah Khan. Thank you so much. Excuse me.
Maybe that's who's doing the testimonials? थोड़ा सा किसे
ठीक